I was standing at my sister's engagement party, champagne flute warm in my hand, surrounded by the very people who'd spent a decade treating my dreams like a punchline. The air was thick with perfume and pretense. And then from across the room, my Uncle James, completely oblivious, raised his voice with a question. A simple, innocent question. "So," he boomed, "I heard a wild rumor. Tell me about this $1.5 million lakefront house you supposedly own." In that instant, you could have heard a pin drop on the plush carpet. Every head turned. Every smile froze. And my parents, my own mother and father, their faces didn't just go pale. They dissolved. All the color, all the composure just drained away, leaving behind two perfect masks of pure, undiluted terror. They looked at me. I took a slow sip of my champagne, let the silence stretch until it was painful, and I smiled. Because for 10 long years I'd been waiting for this exact moment. The moment their lie died and my revenge went live. We've all felt it, haven't we? That simmering frustration when the people who are supposed to believe in you the most are the ones holding you back. When they dismiss your hustle, mock your ambition, and try to write the story of your life as a tragedy before you've even finished the first chapter. You know what it's like to be underestimated, to be the black sheep, to crave that moment of undeniable, jaw-dropping validation. Then you're in the right place. To understand the bomb that went off at that party, you have to go back. Way back. I was the second child. The surprise. My older sister, Chloe, was the golden child. Straight-A student, class president, destined for a pristine, respectable life. Me, I was the kid who took apart the VCR to see how it worked and couldn't put it back together. I saw patterns in things, codes and systems. While my parents dreamed of me becoming a lawyer or a doctor, I was teaching myself to code in a dingy basement, my screen glowing in the dark. The first great fracture happened when I was 17. College applications were due. My parents sat me down at the polished oak dinner table, a table that always felt like a courtroom. "This computer nonsense is a hobby, not a career. You need a real degree, something stable. We've looked at some excellent state schools with strong business programs." I showed them my first big project, a clunky but functional app that had already netted me a few $1,000s from online ads. My mother didn't even look at the screen. She looked at my hands as if they were dirty. "Internet money. It's not real. It'll vanish tomorrow. What will you tell people at parties? That you do something with websites?" The word they used, the one that became their mantra, was feasible. My dreams weren't feasible. My path wasn't feasible. They offered a deal. They'd pay for a traditional degree. If I wanted to pursue my coding fantasy, I was on my own. I remember the feeling. Not hot anger, but a cold, heavy lump forming in my gut. It was the feeling of not being seen, of my passion being treated as a childish delusion. So at 18 I moved out. I took a job as a night shift IT helpdesk guy. My kingdom was a tiny, airless apartment that smelled of stale coffee and desperation. My social life died. 4 years, my existence was a blur of ramen noodles, caffeine burns, and lines of code that danced behind my eyelids when I tried to sleep. I was building something, a platform for freelance designers. It was slow, agonizing, and my family, they interpreted my silence as failure. At family gatherings, I was the cautionary tale. "How's the kick computer thing?" my aunt would ask, pity dripping from her voice. "Still chasing that dream?" My father would sigh, the word dream sounding like disease. Chloe would update everyone on her MBA, her engagement to a financier. The comparisons were a silent, constant pressure. I'd sit there, my knuckles white under the table, smiling tightly, saying, "It's coming along." Inside, a storm was brewing. Their dismissal was no longer just hurtful. It was fuel. The breakthrough came 7 years in. My platform took off. Not a little jump. A seismic, life-altering explosion. A major tech blog featured us, and suddenly we had users, investors, real revenue. I sold my stake 2 years later. The number on that wire transfer, it didn't feel real. It was an abstract, terrifying, glorious number. The first thing I did wasn't to buy a car or a watch. I bought land on a secluded, beautiful lake, 2 hours from the city that had almost broken me. And I built my house, my sanctuary, my $1.5 million monument to every no, every sneer, every sleepless night. I didn't tell a soul, especially not my family, because by then I'd understood the game. Their narrative of me as the struggling, misguided loser was a necessity for them. It validated their choices, cemented Chloe's role as the star. Telling them the truth would be an act of war. And I wasn't ready for war. I was exhausted. So I made a choice. A quiet, calculated choice. I would let them keep their lie. But I would live my truth in plain sight, just elsewhere. I bought nice clothes but told them they were good fakes. I traveled but said I'd found crazy flight deals. I lived a double life. At family functions, I was still slightly scruffy, quiet, struggling Alex. In my real life, I was someone else entirely. The cognitive dissonance for them must have been subtle, but I could see it. A flicker of confusion in my mother's eye when she saw my new watch. A faint doubt in my father's voice when I talked vaguely about contract work. The lie was a living thing between us, and I decided with a chilling clarity that I wouldn't be the one to kill it. They would have to face it in front of everyone when they were least prepared. The stage needed to be perfect. My sister's engagement party was that stage. The country club was all crystal and chandeliers. Chloe was radiant, floating on a cloud of parental approval. My parents were in their element, proud, beaming, holding court. I arrived alone in a deliberately understated but impeccably tailored suit. A uniform for the invisible man. For the first hour, it was the usual script. "Alex, so good to see you. How are you holding up?" My mother's friend whispered as if I'd recently been ill. My father clapped me on the shoulder, a heavy, patronizing gesture. "Glad you could make it. The drive from your apartment, okay?" I just nodded, a serene smile on my face. He said I was a vault. The secret felt physical, a hard, warm stone in my chest. Then came Uncle James. He's not a malicious man, just loud, jovial, and famously terrible with boundaries. He'd had a few glasses of champagne. He'd also just returned from a fishing trip near my lake. "Alex, my boy," he bellowed, pulling me into a bear hug. "I was up at Crystal Lake last weekend. Breathtaking place. Got talking to a guy at the marina, a real estate guy. He's pointing out these insane houses, and he says, 'See that modern masterpiece on the North Shore? The one with the cantilevered deck? Young fella, a tech whiz, built that from the ground up.' And I swear, Alex, he said the name. He said your name. Alexander Reed." I told him, "No, must be a different Alex Reed. My nephew is well, anyway, he was insistent. So come on, spill the beans. Is it true? Do you own a $1.5 million house on Crystal Lake? There it is, the spark. Don't move. Don't blink. Breathe." I let my gaze travel slowly from Uncle James's expectant, tipsy face, across the circle that had now formed around us. I saw Chloe's confused smile. I saw my aunt's hand fly to her mouth. And then I found them. My parents. My mother's champagne flute was trembling, a tiny, frantic vibration. The practiced hostess smile on her face had cracked, revealing the sheer white panic beneath. Her eyes were locked on mine, screaming a silent, desperate command. "Lie. Laugh it off. Say it's a mistake." My father looked hollow, like a puppet with its strings cut. All his authority, his paternal certainty, evaporated. He was just a man staring at the oncoming headlights of a truth he'd spent a decade running from. The silence was deafening. It was the most powerful sound I'd ever heard. Uncle James, finally sensing the tectonic shift he'd caused, faltered. What's going on?" I took one last slow sip of my champagne. I placed the empty flute carefully on a passing waiter's tray. I could feel the eyes of 50 people on me. The vault in my chest opened. I didn't look at Uncle James. I kept my eyes locked on my parents. My voice, when it came, was calm, quiet. It didn't carry across the room, but in that frozen silence, it was all anyone could hear. "It's true, Uncle James. I bought the land 5 years ago. Finished construction last spring. The architect was a nightmare, but the view, it's worth every headache. Watch them. Watch every flinch." My mother made a small, choked sound like a mouse being stepped on. My father found his voice, but it was a weak, papery thing. "Alex, this isn't the time for your stories." That was his move, to reframe my truth as a pathetic fantasy even now. But the dam was broken. "It's not a story, Dad. You can pull up the county property records online. It's under Reed Family Holdings, LLC. I turned finally to Uncle James, my smile widening, becoming genuinely warm. "You should come see it, Uncle Jim. Bring the boat. The fishing off my dock is incredible. In fact," I turned my gaze back to the room, making deliberate, gentle eye contact with various stunned relatives. "I'd love to host everyone. The proper housewarming. Since, I never really had one." The invitation wasn't an invitation. It was a surgical strike. It made the house undeniably socially real. It forced the narrative to shift from "is it true?" to "why didn't we know?" The reaction was a wave. Aunties gasped. Cousins' eyes went wide with shock, then darted to my parents with dawning understanding and a hint of delicious scandal. Chloe looked from me to our parents, betrayal washing over her face. She'd been living the lie too. My mother tried to save it. She let out a forced, tinkling laugh. "Oh, Alex, you're always so mysterious. You should have told us you were doing so well." That word, well. She reduced a $1.5 million asset, a symbol of monumental success, to doing well. Like I'd gotten a modest promotion. But it was too late. The currency of their control, their narrative, was now worthless. I decided to give them one final push. The kill shot. "I wanted to tell you, Mom. I really did. But you and Dad, you were always so worried about me being feasible. You seemed so much more comfortable thinking I was still that kid struggling in a basement. I didn't want to upset the story you told yourselves." There, it was out. Not an accusation, but a quiet, devastating observation. I had named the game, and in naming it, I ended it. The party didn't end, but it changed. It fractured. Clusters of people whispered, casting glances at my parents, who stood isolated in the middle of the room, exposed. The Golden Child's event had become the black sheep's coronation. I didn't gloat. I didn't give a grand speech. I simply circulated. I answered questions about the house, about the tech sale, with humble, matter-of-fact details that only made the achievement more staggering. I was gracious. I was kind. And with every polite answer, I hammered another nail into the coffin of their illusion. The most satisfying moment wasn't a shout. It was watching my father an hour later try to approach me. He looked old, defeated. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. What could he say? "Congratulations. We're proud." It would have been the most hollow sound in the world. He just stood there, and in his eyes I didn't see anger. I saw the thing I'd craved for a decade and now found I didn't need at all. Recognition. The full, awful, humbling recognition of exactly who I was and exactly how wrong he'd been. He turned and walked away without a word. I didn't stay for cake. I drove back to my house on the lake. I sat on my cantilevered deck over the water that glittered in the moonlight, and I felt quiet. The storm inside me was gone. The cold, the hard stone in my chest had melted away. There was no manic triumph, no urge to scream into the void. Just a profound, echoing peace. The revenge wasn't in the revealing. It was in the letting them reveal themselves. I hadn't exposed them as liars. Their own panic, their own desperate attempts to control the narrative in that moment of crisis, did that for them. In front of everyone they wanted to impress, they were revealed as small, insecure people who had bet against their own son and lost. Spectacularly. The fallout was slow and permanent. Chloe didn't speak to our parents for a month. The extended family now treats me with a cautious, curious respect. My parents and I, we have a relationship of sorts. It's distant, polite, built on the unspoken rubble of what they did. They know they lost more than face that night. They lost any right to claim a part of my story. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't about taking something away from someone. It's about building something so magnificent for yourself that their entire worldview has to contort to make room for it. It's about living so well, so authentically, that their life simply can't survive in your presence. If this story of silent triumph resonated with you, if it gave you that chill of satisfaction, do me a favor. Smash that like button. It tells the YouTube algorithm that stories about psychological depth and earned justice deserve to be seen. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a moment where your success became your best revenge? Or have you been holding on to a truth that would change everything? Tell me your stories in the comments below. Let's get a conversation going about the power of quiet resilience. And if you're not yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We dive deep into stories like this every week. Stories of underdogs, quiet grinds, and the moment the tables finally turn. Remember, the best revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a beautifully built house and the serene silence after the truth finally comes home. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next story.